What's up, Flaniverse? We are here early in the evening on Friday night to talk about the Saturday slate. We have 3 games on Saturday. Should be a fun one, very impactful for people in the fantasy playoffs. If you're in your season-long league, if you're in the best ball finals, very, very important week going on right now, and 3 pretty impactful games tomorrow. I mean, we've got the Bengals on the slate. Chase Brown, Jamar Chase have been carrying people. Joe Burrow to some extent, maybe T. Higgins. We've got Justin Herbert and McConkey. We've got Courtland, Sutton. A lot of pretty impactful fantasy players on this slate. So should be a fun one for general fantasy purposes, but we're not here to talk about general fantasy. We are going to be talking about the 3-game slate on DraftKings. I'm going to be going, as usual, position by position: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defense, kickers. I'll take a brief look at the showdown slates. Also, I'll play around with lineups a little bit. I have 0 confirmed guests as of right now. I see Drew in chat. I know Drew was busy doing some family stuff, might not be able to join. Justin didn't get a response, but they didn't respond last week either, and then they just popped onto the stream out of nowhere. I did send them a link just in case they feel like surprising me once again, but I'm prepared to do this show solo. In the meantime, we're going to start with the quarterbacks, and we've got some good quarterbacks on this slate, but Joe Burrow kind of stands out above the rest here. I want to say hello to people in chat for the Night Owls already here. Good to see you. Who Hames, Brandon, yes, Skull, Vikings. Brandon, are you also a Vikings pessimist like I am? Because I am very nervous that the Vikings are going to lose to the Packers at home this week, and the dream will die. But obviously hopeful that we can win the next 2, get the bye there. What's up, Drew? Aaron, good to see you. Matthew, Steven, what's up, Rio? Good to see you. Best ball on call. All right, I'll get into this. Joe Burrow, I think, stands out above the rest as far as the quarterbacks. The projections say as much. Also, as you can see here, nearly a 3 fantasy point difference between Joe Burrow and the next best quarterback. I think the ceiling for Joe Burrow is just higher than anybody else on this slate. And we've got some fun quarterbacks that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do have a pretty good ceiling, but I think Burrow has at least the highest likelihood of hitting a really strong ceiling. And we've seen it a lot. The Bengals offense over the past 5 weeks ranks 3rd in neutral pass rate. They're just throwing it over and over. Love to see it for Joe Burrow. He's averaging 22.7 fantasy points over that span. Also a sort of sneakily good matchup. Broncos defense, we think of it as being a pretty strong defense in general. Over the past 5 weeks, they have allowed the 2nd most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. It's been no, I'll pull that up here. We can double check my work here. Yeah, 2nd best matchup for quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. So I think everything kind of points to Joe Burrow being the best quarterback on the slate. Of course, he's also priced like it. So we will, if you play Joe Burrow, you're going to have to make some concessions. And some of the concessions that I was prepared to make today have kind of gone away. Like James Conner is playing, so that kind of takes away Michael Carter as a strong option. J.K. Dobbins is playing, so that takes away Kamani Vidal to some extent. Jaleel McLaughlin comes in, so that throws a wrinkle into my Audric Estime enthusiasm. So a lot of the pay down options that I was considering, at least at running back, have kind of become less appealing over the course of today and yesterday to some extent. So it's a little bit tougher to get to Joe Burrow than I was hoping it was, but I still think there are ways to get there. There are some wide receivers, some tight ends that we can pay down for. So I do think Joe Burrow, just objectively the best option on the slate if you can get there. And only getting 22% ownership is pretty flat at quarterback. Everybody getting at least 12%, nobody more than Burrow at 22%. I think that's a totally reasonable number for Burrow, even though he is technically the chalkiest quarterback. I am not concerned about that. 22%, I'll probably be above that number on Burrow. All right. Ooh, Maye is going to shock the world tomorrow. He might. I kind of like Maye. Let's move on down the list, though. Bo Nix has actually doesn't have the 2nd best projection. What do we sort it by here? By salary. I guess we're sorted by salary. All right, let's sort by fantasy points. No, let's sort by salary. Let's just move down the list salary-wise. Bo Nix is the 2nd most expensive quarterback. As you can see here, Kyler Murray projects almost the exact same. Justin Herbert projects almost the exact same. Matthew Stafford projects 1 fantasy point worse and Drake Maye 1.5 worse. So really not much separating the quarterbacks on this slate in terms of projection or ownership. So really, it's the kind of slate where I don't know if you want to make a big stand on your quarterback. Again, I think my biggest stand is going to be just getting overweight on Joe Burrow, kind of the obvious one. But the quarterback like sort of sets up the rest of your lineup, because for me, I'm always stacking the quarterback regardless of who my quarterback is. I want them to be stacked, and then I guess on a 3-game set, I'm not forcing the bring back, so it doesn't entirely dictate your entire lineup. But it can be impactful on kind of the choices you make with the rest of your lineup. And there's nothing that's really separating them, so I'm gonna have a lot of very different looking lineups. I guess macro level, I'll just say this. I think I'm going to be doing a lot of overstacking on this slate, game stacking. So like when I have Joe Burrow at quarterback, I'm probably going to have at least 2 pass catches with him, maybe 3 sometimes. Maybe I'll include Chase Brown in some of those stacks. And then I'll also have at least 1 Broncos bring back a lot of the time. Like I think a strong way to approach this slate is we have 3 games that none of them are really separating from a total in terms of like the total being way higher than the others. But I think they all have sort of potential to surprise, to go off in a big way. So I think probably a sharp approach to this slate is to be overstacking quite a bit and taking 5, 6, 7 players from the same game in a lot of lineups is going to be an approach that I take quite a bit on this slate. And I think Joe Burrow as a starting place for that game stack makes a lot of sense. But I also don't dislike Bo Nix being the starting quarterback. Obviously, you get $1,000 savings there, easier to pay up for Jamar Chase. You can, of course, put Courtland Sutton in there. We'll talk about some of the receiving options. But Bo Nix also a strong option in his own right. Bo Nix, Broncos offense ranked 10th in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. So they've actually been throwing a fair amount. Nix averaging 17.8 fantasy points over that span. He's doing pretty well for a rookie quarterback. And it is a very middling matchup. Bengals defense has allowed the 15th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. Seems like a strong enough option. I guess I'm going to go pretty quickly through the quarterbacks because, as usual, it's not the most interesting position to talk about. Maybe once we get into the wide receivers, maybe we'll have some epiphanies about which quarterbacks we want to play. But generally, just quarterbacks. I'll give you the general stats here. Kyler Murray, Cardinals offense ranked 5th in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks, so they have been chucking it a bit. So the first 3 I'm reading off here all in the top 10. Murray averaging just 16.2 fantasy points over the past 5 weeks. He has not been that great, including a game against the Panthers where he really let me down. Feels like he lets me down every week. I am ready to get off this bus, but it's a 3-game slate, so I can't entirely get off the Kyler train. Again, so first three matchups we looked at, also strong matchups. The Rams defense has allowed the 11th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So all 3 of the first 3 quarterbacks, they pass at a pretty high rate and they're playing in above average matchups. Justin Herbert, I think we're going to, well, at least continue the first trend. Leads Chargers offense ranked 12th in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. So again, top third, almost top third, I guess, in terms of neutral pass rate. Herbert averaging 15.5 fantasy points over that span. Not the best matchup, not the worst. Patriots defense has allowed the 19th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. Drake Maye, Patriots offense ranked 20th in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks, so they're not passing it quite as much. However, Maye runs a little bit. Maye is averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game over the past 5 weeks. Also not the best matchup. So a couple of dings on Drake Maye, where a lot of quarterbacks have nice matchups. They're passing a lot. They're scoring a lot of fantasy points. Chargers defense has allowed the 8th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. So not the best setup for Maye, but he is he's capable of putting up a ceiling game here, of course. And then Matthew Stafford, this is actually kind of shocking. Rams offense ranked 31st in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. They're just not chucking it, running it quite a bit. Stafford averaging just 14.2 fantasy points per game over the past 5 weeks. However, great matchup for Stafford. Cardinals defense has allowed the 4th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. So all that to say, Burrow, just my favorite quarterback on the slate. Not really groundbreaking stuff. I think he, you can see he projects the best. Everybody, if you can afford it, you're going to want to play a lot of Burrow. I think I'm going to find ways to play Burrow more than the 22% the field is at. I think Bo Nix probably is my second favorite quarterback on the slate. Again, I love that game environment. He provides a little bit of price savings. He's been a pretty good fantasy quarterback this year. Now, beyond those two, probably go to Herbert as my number 3. He's been playing, I don't know, he hasn't really been playing like now he's kind of come back down to earth in recent weeks. There was a stretch after their bye week where they're throwing a lot. He was scoring a lot of fantasy points. He's kind of come back down to earth. But overall, I still think, Herbert has probably the third likeliest to hit a big score here. I guess Kyler would be 4th for me. Just, he has shown the ability to put up a ceiling game a few times this year. He's had a couple games where he's put up, 23, 28 kind of fantasy points. As I recall, I don't have this in front of me, but as I recall, earlier in the year, he's putting up fantasy points quite a bit. It's a nice enough matchup for Kyler. He runs a little bit. I think he's right there. Probably Stafford, my 5th, and then Maye, my 6th. Again, Stafford just has the great matchup. Don't love that they have not been throwing a lot, but maybe in this game, they will throw a little bit more. It's a nice matchup for throwing the ball. So maybe we see a little bit of increase there. And then just has the pretty clear like top receivers that we want to go to. Maye is a little bit tough just because not a great matchup. He hasn't been doing he's been fine fantasy wise, but not amazing. But overall, just tough matchup, not throwing quite enough. Sort of hard to know who you want to pair him with. I think Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry, they have a lot of like decent options to pair him with, but it's not extremely obvious who you want to stack him with. So I think I would rank Maye 6th of the group. But again, I kind of think I'm going to be spread out. I think I'm going to be overweight on Joe Burrow, so probably slightly underweight on all the other quarterbacks, but it's going to be pretty even for me. I think I'm going to have exposure to all 6 of these quarterbacks. I think outside of Burrow, I'm going to be just a little bit underweight to the field on the rest. How are you guys? How are you guys approaching the quarterbacks? Because honestly, I don't feel like I have a super strong read here. I just think Burrow has the highest floor ceiling combo. But on a 3-game slate, it doesn't really matter that you have the best floor or ceiling combo. I like it, but I don't. I could easily be convinced if Drew shows up here and makes a strong argument for another quarterback. I could be convinced to lose some of that love to play more of another. As of right now, though, I think my approach is going to be overweight Burrow, a little bit underweight everybody else, but pretty flat to the rest of the quarterbacks on this slate. All right, Steven, you look for me all day. I did a stream earlier in the day on the main slate for 4 for 4 with Pat and Davis. I've been out though at we have my brother's in town with his family, so had a gathering tonight, and now I'm back for a late night stream. Good to see you guys showing up here with the Night Owls. I'm sure hopefully some people will be watching this in the morning. Hopefully the rest of you are sleeping well right now and well rested when you watch this in the morning. All right, let's move on and talk about some running backs. Yeah, Steven says that's not till Sunday. Yeah, I know. Got to get the Saturday content out there first. Huham says he likes Bo a lot. All right, well, state your case. What's your case for Bo? Other than anything other than what I've just said. I mean, I'm with you. He's my second favorite quarterback on the slate, I think. What is up, Tyler? Dr. DFS says day owl there. Are you in Australia? Am I remembering that right? We've got some Aussies who watch these streams. Always good to see you guys. All right. Easier pay down options. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Running back. Moving on over. Chase Brown, the top projected. Actually, no, sorry. I'm sorted by, well, he is the top projected. I am sorted by salary, but he still projects more than 2 fantasy points better than the next running back on the slate. Kind of nice, I guess, in some ways that we do have some other strong pay up options now besides Chase Brown, with James Conner in, J.K. Dobbins in now, still getting projected for 64% ownership. So people are believers, and it makes sense. I mean, Chase Brown has been, other than last week when he let me down big time in the best ball playoffs. Jesse, no, you do not use the same link as before. You use the link that I'm about to send you just in case you feel like showing up. No pressure. I know. There's no guarantees that you want to show up. But if you did decide at some point to jump on the stream, you would then use the StreamYard link that I just DM'd to you on Twitter. So yeah, if you feel like joining, hop on, block your camera, whatever you need to do. Whatever you did last time worked out just fine. But yeah, feel free to join whenever if you feel like it. Give me some opportunities to sip my bourbon if you're in the stream with me. All right. Yeah, Chase Brown looks great. What else can you really say about Chase Brown? Over the past 4 games, he has 69 carries and 17 targets on 64.6% route participation. That's pretty high route participation for a running back. Pretty strong target share, over 4 targets per game over those 4 games. And then again, nice 69 carries in those 4 games. Just he has that kind of maybe the best role in the NFL for a running back or close to it. Also, once again, we talked about it with Joe Burrow, it being a sneaky good matchup for Joe Burrow because we think of the Denver defense as being really strong, but they've been bad against the run in recent weeks too. Broncos defense allowed the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So the matchup is great for Chase Brown. The role is great for Chase Brown. The only real negative to Chase Brown is the 64% ownership. The price tag, I guess, to some extent, but like 7,600, not really prohibitive. If I had to guess, I think I'll be slightly underweight to Chase Brown, just as I'm, trying to fit in some of those other running backs, but I don't even feel strongly about that. 64% seems totally fine for Chase Brown on a 3-game slate. The role is awesome. The matchup has been pretty good recently. Nothing wrong with it. What kind of bourbon? We got a Maker's Mark here. The usual. Actually, I don't think that's true. No, I'm drinking something else. I don't remember. I don't remember what I poured myself. It's tasty though. It is a tasty, as usual, tasty bourbon. All right. After Chase Brown, Kyren Williams, $100 cheaper. You drop 12% in ownership. Couple fantasy points lower on Kyren Williams. I guess I'll pull up schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs. You can see here how good of a matchup it is for Chase Brown. Also a good matchup for Kyren Williams. 6th best matchup over the past 5 weeks. The Cardinals defense allowed the 6th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs. Strong matchups all around for our top guys here. Over the past, and the role, honestly, not much worse than Chase Brown. Over the past 5 weeks, 112 carries. I guess worse in this way, only 6 targets over the past 5 games. So just not really involved in the passing game. Hasn't been as efficient as actually. I'm saying this without having the stats in front of me. It is my impression that he's not been as efficient. I didn't actually look up Kyren Williams' efficiency stats in recent weeks. So don't take my word for that. Cardinals defense, though, like I said, has allowed the 6th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. Kyren looks like another very strong play. The one downside there is he is getting a fair amount of ownership and not involved in the passing game. So I guess two downsides plus a third in the price being the second highest on the slate. I think Kyren is a strong play. Probably one that I'm close to the field. Again, I think because I like to play some of the oddball running backs on these 3-game slates. I think, oftentimes you'll see that a lot of pros will just load up on the best running backs on the slate, get different elsewhere. I don't play that way. I've never played that way, and I've had some success not playing that way, playing some of the more off the wall plays. So I think I'll probably be slightly underweight to Kyren as I play some more off the wall plays that we will get to in a bit. But I think he's a strong play. I think Chase Brown, the best play on the slate. I think Kyren not far behind. I will say part of the reason, and this isn't really an off the wall play, but if James Conner is going to come in at 16% ownership, I'm just going to play a lot of James Conner. James Conner like has kind of the same, like pretty close to the same floor ceiling combo as Kyren Williams, and getting much lower ownership. Now this might be just a matter of some of the sites having not updated yet for James Conner being in, because it was kind of up in the air whether he was going to play. If he does come in sub 25% ownership, I'm going to have a lot of interest in James Conner. He's just a really strong fantasy player. His role is great. So over the past 5 games, 73 carries, so a little bit lower than Kyren, but 22 targets over the past 5 games on 45.5% route participation. And to be clear, pretty clear that he is playing at this point. They did not call up Michael Carter, who we kind of thought was going to be the fill-in this week. They didn't call him up, which all indications are that both James Conner and Trey Benson will be active for this game. So yeah, I think James Conner going to be a big part of my lineups this week. Also not a bad matchup. Rams defense has allowed the 12th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. I'm loading up. I'll be loading up on James Conner. Wade asks, as a fellow Minnesota guy, I have to ask, do you find yourself fighting heart versus brain on Viking stacks? I mean, always. As a fantasy player who is also a fan of the local teams, yeah, I like, especially because now at this point I've been drafting a ton of playoff best ball teams, for example, and I've been drafting them as though the Lions are going to have the bye in week 1. If the Vikings get the bye, a lot of my teams are going to be dead, because I've been doing like Chiefs Vikings combos. So like Sam Darnold is my quarterback fill-in for that first week. So yeah, there's certainly, I'm going to be torn a bit from that standpoint. It's going to hurt me financially if the Vikings get the 1 seed, but I'd still take it if the Vikings can get that 1 seed. Although I getting the 1 seed, that's cool, but like all I really care about is getting to the Super Bowl. Obviously, I want them to win the Super Bowl, but really I just want to get them to the Super Bowl. I think that would be super cool. So if they get to the Super Bowl, it will have been worth it. If they get the bye and then lose in the second round, I am just going to be, I won't tear any hair out because I don't really have the hair to tear out, but I'll be very upset. I won't be happy about that. Steven asks, any coach speak on the JK and Connors? That's a good question. As long as we're on James Conner, let me pull up any coach speak. I don't recall seeing anything, but it's possible that I missed something. So let me pull it up. All right, getting to current here. Not really. So on the 24th, he just said, if James Conner and Trey Benson are out, Michael Carter will get a lot of carries, I'm sure. Again, Michael Carter was not, I think he had to be called up from the practice squad. I read a tweet about it earlier, and he wasn't. So I think he's not going to be active, which is an indication that James Conner is available. The only other quote was, yeah, on the 26th, head coach Jonathan Gannon said, James Conner has been progressing good. So take that for what it's worth. Not something. Okay, Drew saw something. James is always ready. All right, I don't see that in the coach speak index, but maybe it's a quote that I missed somewhere. But regardless, it's just kind of not anything that is particularly insightful. But I think the fact that they're already like a day before, it's not a game time decision. They've already made the determination that he is going to play tomorrow, that they're not going to need to have Michael Carter there. I think he's probably good to go. I know yesterday there were some, like I watched a short video of him in practice where the narrative was, he, even though he is practicing, like, favoring one of his knees over the banged up one, which was kind of interesting. But that was yesterday, and then today they decided that he's good to go. So I think he's probably good to go. I'm playing it as though he is good to go. All right, Drew threw the the tweet into chat, which I can't copy paste it right now. Can I? No, I can't. Not gonna be able to copy paste it. But if you want to go check out the tweet from Drew, yeah. So I think James Conner is good to go. Is my takeaway. Drew, let me know if the tweet says anything other than that. But I take from what you said previously that he is good to go. And then J.K. Dobbins. Let me take a look at that also as we are quickly approaching the J.K. Dobbins talk. Nope. Oh, the latest I'm seeing is just J.K. Dobbins looked good, had a good week of practice. Will make a final determination on his game status tomorrow. I think that's all I've heard is that he's looked good in practice. I think all the indications are that he's going to be the starting running back right away. But I think we're all kind of guessing at that. Dobbins getting 36% ownership at 5,800. You can see the projection wise, like there's a pretty big gap after J.K. Dobbins, at least the way RotoGrinders has it projected. So he looks like a pretty, excuse me, pretty strong option. He is getting appropriate ownership, I would say, at 36%, 5,800. The matchup for J.K. Dobbins, let me read off my notes here. Patriots defense allowed the 7th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So it's a nice matchup. I guess the biggest concern, obviously, with J.K. Dobbins is just we don't know whether he's going to be ready. Like I thought he was going to be out for the year with the sprained MCL, but he has been practicing and apparently looking good in practice, and he's active. So I think we can play it as though he is good to go in this game, and hope that he gets back to his form from earlier in the year when he was crushing. I think it looks like a strong play. I think I'm probably close to the field at 36% on J.K. Dobbins. But then after Dobbins, we move down to pretty contrarian. Like everybody else sub 20%. We talked about Brown, Kyron, Dobbins, and Connor. Stevenson getting 19% projected ownership at 5,700. Rhamondre Stevenson's role has been good, not great, I guess I would say. Over the past 4 games, Rhamondre Stevenson has 51 carries, so just under 13 carries per game, and 7 targets, so just under 2 targets per game on 39.9% route participation. Not the greatest role for Rhamondre Stevenson. Chargers defense, though, has allowed the 5th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So nice matchup, decent but not great role. And then you have Antonio Gibson, who has been eating into that role over the past 4 games, has 30 carries, so just over 7 carries per game over the past 4 weeks, and 6 targets on 25.5% route participation. So there is a little bit of a split backfield there for the Patriots. Clearly, Rhamondre Stevenson is leading that split backfield, but he's getting, 19% ownership. That's pretty reasonable ownership for a player like Rhamondre. And Antonio Gibson getting 9% ownership. I think that's okay. I don't think I'm taking any kind of major stand on Antonio Gibson at 9%. I think that just seems kind of reasonable. I think I'd like to be above 19% on Rhamondre Stevenson, though. Like he just any game, especially in a nice matchup, I think he has the ability to score a couple touchdowns or put up a 100-yard bonus with a touchdown. A lot of ways for Rhamondre Stevenson to get there, and he's only 5,700. So I do think that I will be at least above weight to Rhamondre Stevenson. Whereas Antonio Gibson, I think it's kind of just like the ownership is about where it should be on a 3-game slate. Kamani Vidal is tricky for me. I was so ready to play a ton of Kamani Vidal, and I am less ready now that we have J.K. Dobbins in. I think he's playable if you want to make the bet on like J.K. Dobbins isn't fully ready to go. Like I think Kamani Vidal is a totally fine bet from that standpoint. Like he might have a bigger role if J.K. Dobbins isn't, if they want to ease him back in a little bit. And again, we don't have any coach speak really telling us that they want to ease him back in. So I think we can kind of hope for that and then play a little bit of Vidal. I think he has a little bit of juice. Like he's shown something. He's had some nice big plays already this year. So I think he's a totally fine play on a 3-game slate, but he is getting a bit of ownership, over 9%. So if you were coming in at like 2%, that would be a bet I'd really like. At 9%, it's kind of, I don't love that. I think I'm probably going to be with the field at this point, maybe even light on 9%. I think that's just kind of feels fine to me, but not a great bet. I think Javonte is actually a better bet. With that said, it's tough because Jaleel McLaughlin is back. Auto-Custom was really good in the most recent game, and the coach speak was really positive on Auto-Custom. Actually, let's take a look at the Broncos in recent weeks. So we can look at just the total of the Broncos in the past 5 weeks. I guess they've only played 4 games in that span. Javonte Williams has played all 4 games, has 22 carries, so just over 5 carries per game, 18 targets. So that's pretty intriguing. Over 4 targets per game on 42.2% route participation for Javonte Williams. Jaleel McLaughlin, and actually let's maybe we want to look at the game log here. Jaleel McLaughlin, the last game, I believe he got hurt mid-game. It kind of appeared that he was taking on the bigger role. So in week 13, 14 carries for Jaleel McLaughlin. I guess he only played 36% of the snaps. That's kind of interesting. Played 36% of the snaps, but had 14 carries and 2 targets on 11% route participation. Then the next week he had 3 targets and 7 carries. Only played 24.6% of the snaps. And then he got hurt during that game in week 15, as I recall. So it kind of appeared that he was taking on a bigger role. Now I'm questioning myself. He got hurt during that game, right? Do I need to look at by quarter? Maybe I do. All right. I think he got hurt mid-game in week 15, but I do want to look at it real quick. All right, so he did play in the fourth. No, he played 0 snaps in the fourth quarter. 2 in the first, 8 in the second, 5 in the third, 0 in the fourth. So I think maybe he got hurt in the third quarter of that game. I don't know. It's a messy situation that I'm going to be, frankly, taking shots on all of them. But I think I'm going to play it by ownership largely because, all right, so the reason that I want to play them, I guess I'm burying the lead here, is best matchup by far for running backs against Cincinnati over the past 5 weeks. You can see here 9.4 fantasy points over the expectation per game over the past 5 weeks. Second best is 5.2. So just a gap in terms of how good of a matchup it's been for running backs against Cincinnati, primarily through the air, but even, positive on the ground. Also, everything has looked great for running backs against Cincinnati in recent weeks. So I see that, and I see that they're all coming in at fairly low ownership. And I think I want to take some shots there. But also, it's a gross split committee. And I was super excited about it before Jaleel McLaughlin came back. And now it's like, man, if you can get this right, I think that there is some potential for something big here. But man, it's a gross situation. I think so. I think based on what we've seen, the past couple times Jaleel McLaughlin has played, he seemed to be kind of carving out a role for himself as maybe the lead back here. So I think Jaleel McLaughlin might actually be my favorite at 8% owned at 4,700. Probably followed by Javonte, even though he is getting 15% ownership and he's 5,400. I think he has probably the best possibility of getting 18 carries and 4 targets. And he hasn't really done it at all recently. So I don't want to make it sound like he has a great possibility of doing that. But I think he has the best possibility of the running backs of spiking, getting back to this kind of level that he saw, not since week 8. But he's had, I don't know. it's such a gross situation. Maybe I'm overthinking this and I should just be avoiding it like the field is largely doing. Just the matchup is so good. They're all pretty cheap. They're all coming in low owned. So like I want to find a play that I love here. I do think that McLaughlin, probably my favorite. Estimate also coming in at 5% owned at 5,000. And there was some kind of good coach speak, but even that is a little bit hedging. Like even the coach speak on Estimate has not been like amazing. So I'll read off on the December 22nd, Sean Payton was asked. So he gave a quote on whether Audric Estimate has opened the door to more opportunities going forward. So I think the way that prompt comes in suggests to me that he was asked specifically, like, has he opened the door for more opportunities? And what Sean Payton said was, yeah, I think he has. I think he played well. I was encouraged with the physicality he ran with, and I think he'll only get better. So I was encouraged. Even Blake Watson had some carries that were encouraging. So balancing that is going to be important for us here down the stretch. So he's asked about has Audric Estime earned more of a role, and he says yeah, but then he also says so has Blake Watson. So like that's not really like a ringing endorsement when you immediately say so is this other running back. So it's not like that positive for Estime. And he does say like we need to balance the running backs going forward. So ultimately, I don't have a really strong read. I wish I could tell you I had a really strong read on these Denver running backs because I want to play them. I want to find somebody who's going to surprise us. But Sean Payton is just unpredictable. I think Jaleel McLaughlin, my favorite of the group, just based on the fact that he seemed to be kind of earning more of a role before he got hurt. He's been fully practicing. One more quote on Audric Estime was on the 26th offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi said, I was real pleased with how Audric Estime ran against the Chargers. He ran hard. He's a big guy. And we tell him that, hey, your game is heading downhill. You don't want to be a dancer. That's not your game. I thought he did that well. Running the ball is always a priority for us. So he'll get his opportunities and hopefully he plays well like he did against the Chargers. So that one is a little bit more positive to me. Like he's figuring out how we want him to play in this league. He's going to get opportunities. So I think there's some possibility that Estime also takes on that role. Ultimately, I think, all right, let's take a look at the ownership. I think I want to be above 8% on Jaleel McLaughlin, but not much. I think I want to be at like 12% Jaleel McLaughlin. I think I want to be above weight on 5% Audric Estime, but not much. Maybe 8 to 10% Estime. Javonte, I don't know. I think I'm probably with the field. Like, I don't even know if I want to be above weight there. Blake Watson at 0.5%. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a couple shares there just because he is the stone min and he's coming in at 0.5%. But I don't think that we have anything that gives us any great like reason to think it's one running back over the other. I think it's just Sean Payton is going to mess with us and maybe he'll just give them each 4 carries and a target. Maybe he will randomly decide it's Blake Watson week. It's a mess. But if somebody does break out, like in terms of opportunities, like it's a great matchup and they should do well. So I'm struggling with it. I think I'm going to be playing some of all of them, even including a few shares of Blake Watson in only, and to be clear, almost all the analysis that I give on what I'm doing, I'm talking about the largest field contest. I'm not talking about like 100-man field. I would not play probably any of them in a 100-man field. But in the largest field contest, I will be taking a few shots on Blake Watson. But he also, like, fingers crossed, maybe he's inactive and I can be saved from doing that. Or maybe one of them is inactive. That would be helpful to not have to worry about 4 running backs here with Jaleel McLaughlin back. It's gross. I don't know what else to say about it. Do any of you have a good play here? Because I really don't have a good way to separate them. Who thinks that one of them is going to be someone. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, and they don't need to be. Like, just looking at the recent game log, maybe they won't be. Steven says McLaughlin should be their main back. Exactly. He looked like he had the juice. Does Mims count as a running back? Unfortunately, we can't play him there. Do you play Jaleel with Bo and less Jaleel without him? He's not super involved in the passing game. Let's see. Next we can look at his full game log here. Like, he looks like he should be more involved in the passing game than he is. Like, the route participation is not super high. Maxes out. He had 5 targets in week 1, but then maxes out at 3 targets since then. So no, I don't think that is that you necessarily want to be stacking him with Bo Nix. All right, enough on the Denver running backs. It's tough. I want to get into it because I really want to find one that I fall in love with, and I'm not really doing it. I do think Julian McLaughlin probably my favorite of the group because he did look like he had some juice. He looked like Sean Payton was starting to really come around to him being the lead back before he got hurt. He's cheap. He's not that high owned, so he's probably my favorite. But I think you can kind of make a case for any of them. Any other running backs to talk about? Let's see. I'm going to sort by fantasy points. Yeah, Blake Corum. Michael Carter, I think is inactive at this point, so I guess Trey Benson would be the next man up there. Sadly, I don't think Khalil Herbert is going to happen. Kept trying to make it happen, but it's just not going to happen. Let's take a look at Blake Corum, I guess. Just look at the game log. Or let's look at the last 4 for Blake Corum. So over the past, I guess, 5 games, 25 carries. So he's getting 5 carries per game, 3 targets on 8.3% route. So if he gets 5 carries and round up to 1 target, I don't think that's enough on a 3-game slate. Maybe a better showdown play. Trey Benson, what's he been doing? I guess Benson, you can also make the case of like James Conner's banged up. Over the past 4 games, he has 14 carries and 1 target. I think he's like maybe a better play than Corum just for the contingent value. Like if James Conner is banged up, and of course Benson has also been, but maybe he has more value just from that standpoint of Conner could re-aggravate during the game, something like that. I don't feel that great about it. No, Haskins is not really. You can't play Haskins, I don't think, on the 3-game slate. He has not recently had that goal line work. He had it for a little while, like mid-season, but he has not had it in recent weeks. All right. Tracy. Who's Tracy? Who are we talking about? Tyrone Tracy? I don't know. Okay. Let's move on and talk about some wide receivers. Oh, and I haven't said it yet on the stream. If you're watching and you're not already subscribed to the channel, I am trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the NFL season. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. Help me out. We got another 900 subscribers left to go before reaching my goal, and we're getting close. We have a month and a half left until the end of the season. So if you would take a moment, subscribe to the channel, like the video, commenting, all of that is very helpful with the YouTube algorithm, and I would be appreciative of the support. All right, I'm going to move on, talk about wide receivers. Puka Nacua, the top projected receiver on the slate, getting 37% ownership at 8,000. Roll is awesome for Puka Nacua. I guess we can. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at the matchup for Rams receivers. Okay, so coverage grade, not great for Puka Nacua. Slightly better for Cooper Kupp. Tutu Atwell, Colby Parkinson. Bad for DeMarcus Robinson, looks like. But the role is just so good for Puka Nacua. I think the ownership is probably justified at 37%. Puka has 51 targets on 87.6% route participation over his past 5 games. Actually, not the best matchup for receivers in recent weeks. Cardinals defense has allowed the 7th fewest schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the past 5 weeks. So not the best from that standpoint. But Puka's just kind of matchup proof because he gets targeted so much. I think that he is a fine play at 37%. I don't know that I'm taking any kind of major stand on Puka. I don't know that I'm going to max the gauntlet. I'll get my drafts in. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to 150 in the gauntlet specifically. I do love me some playoff best ball. Hey, yeah, that good idea. Make sure you subscribe with your wife's account, your daughter's account, your son's account, your brother's account. Subscribe for all your people. Um, Appreciate that. What's up, Purple Yosh? Good to see you. I guess let's do this team by team, maybe. So Puka Nacua, 37% ownership, looks pretty good. Cooper Kupp, 19% ownership. Was it last week that he put up 0 fantasy points, or was that 2 weeks ago? I don't remember which week that was, but I think it was last week. Not great for Cooper Kupp. I still think he has the upside. 19% ownership at 6,500, so a little bit of price savings there. I think I like it. I think that looks pretty good for Cooper Kupp. And again, if you look at let's see, the past 5 games for Cooper Kupp, still 28 targets. Like, it's under 6 targets per game, but again, that includes last game where he had 0 fantasy points. 74.5% route participation. I don't know. Like, I'm not in love with it. That's not really that great of a role in recent weeks, but I wouldn't be that shocked either if Matthew Stafford just randomly decides, you know what, I'm going to target Cooper Kupp 12 times today. So I think 19% is probably reasonable, not like something I'm taking a major stand on. Not really enthusiastic about any of the other receivers. Demarcus Robinson, I guess 2% owned. Like, I'll probably be with or above that. Tutu Atwell, 4% owned. What are the recent game logs here for the Rams? So last week, Demarcus Robinson still 63.2% route participation, just 1 target. Why are people playing Tutu Atwell more than Demarcus Robinson? 26.3% route participation and 2 targets last week for Tutu Atwell. In week 15, Tutu Atwell, okay, 56.7% route participation. Was there an injury that I missed on Tutu Atwell or something like that? I don't understand why he would be getting more ownership than Demarcus Robinson. Robinson 3,700. Tutu 3,500. Tutu projects better. I think I have more interest in Demarcus Robinson. I feel like I'm missing something with the. Let's look at the. Here's the route share report for the Rams. Tutu. Looks like the 57% game was the outlier for Tutu. They went down to 32 and 26%. What happened in that game? Maybe Demarcus Robinson got hurt that game, and then he came back up to, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I think it's probably Demarcus Robinson would be my preferred play of the two. Especially if Tutu's going to get more ownership. If they're at the same ownership, I'd rather just make my bets on Demarcus Robinson, who's had multiple multi-touchdown games this year. Has been, running almost every week. He's running 50+%, 60+% of routes. Yeah, I think I'd rather take my shots on Demarcus Robinson than Tutu Atwell. I think Tutu is fine at 4%. Just if I'm choosing one, it would be Demarcus Robinson would be, I think, the better bet in my opinion, but I don't feel like it's pretty close. Not going to any Jordan Whittington. I'm going to check in on chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. Ooh, I missed a super chat. All right, 1 second. Yeah, you got to make a bot farm to get me to 5K. All right, SC, good to see you. All right. SC says, excuse me. Sup, Neil? Great to see you, bro. Looking forward to that playoff best ball content. Love your best ball analysis. Also, good luck. Nice 3-gamer. Appreciate that. Yeah, I have not found time to get the playoff best ball content out there yet. I do plan to do some at some point in the next week or two, because it is like maybe my favorite format of anything at this point. And I just heard back from Hope today that they're apparently not doing playoff weekly winners this year, which I think was my favorite, and the one that I made won one of the weeks last year. So pretty disappointed that's not coming out, but I guess I'll just focus more on playoff best ball at some point. It is a really fun format that most players get wrong. Might be most at this point. So I will do that at some point. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you to SC. Yeah, Robinson has been getting zeros last few weeks, but honestly, like if he's running the routes and seeing a couple targets, like I don't really care as long as he has the upside to just score a touchdown, get a couple catches. I think that's fine. Davis's ears are burning. What did I say about Davis? I don't think I said anything. Just playoff best ball, maybe. All right. Are we liking Stafford? I think Stafford is fine. I think he's my second least favorite quarterback. I believe I ranked them, and I think that's where I was on Stafford. But it's a nice matchup. I think he's a totally reasonable play. But they're like 31st in neutral pass rate in the past 5 weeks. I was hyping DeMarcus. Oh, okay, I got you now. Yeah. Davis was not a fan of DeMarcus Robinson in best ball. I was a big fan. I think ultimately, I think he was like a positive advance rate player who has not done anything in the playoffs. So who's to say who was right there on DeMarcus Robinson? Yeah, you got to pay attention to those buys, not fooling around, crew. But good that you noticed it just after one draft. I see people who have drafted tons of times and they're drafting wrong, like they have no idea how the format works. So good on you for figuring it out pretty quickly. Single entry, I would probably just start with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and see what I can fit around them. All right. And I agree with this. Immortal says any week Kupp or Robinson could pop off. Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Enough on the Rams receivers. Again, Jamar Chase would be probably my single entry lineup. I think he's a very, very strong play. 39% ownership is totally warranted. If we look at his usage in the past, so this will be 4 games for the Bengals. Jamar Chase, 46 targets, so more than 11 targets per game, 96.3% route participation. The matchup, again, we talked about it with the quarterbacks. I guess I'll pull that up. Schedule adjusted matchups for receivers, the best possible matchup over the past 5 weeks for receivers against Denver. That is primarily against slot. Now, who is that? Yoshi? Let me look. Who is currently the slot receiver in recent weeks for the Bengals? Oh, Gesicki. That's right. Gesicki is, yeah. Yoshi also 68%. Chase 31% from the slot. But again, it's just been a matchup. I mean, it's been a positive matchup for every type of receiver against the Broncos. Yeah, I think Chase is just my favorite wide receiver play on the slate. I think he looks great. I'm going to play a ton. They still theoretically have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they will be throwing quite, and they've been throwing at the 3rd highest rate in the league. To me, everything just stands out for Jamar Chase. And that's, again, I know that's not groundbreaking. That's the downside is we might see some more steam than we're expecting on the ownership because he's just done it every week in recent weeks. I think it probably continues, but the field will probably be there on Jamar Chase. We don't even have a note on T. Higgins. I thought he was questionable as of like earlier today. So I'm surprised that we don't have at least like something. Is he still questionable? Let me look this up real quick. I mean, it doesn't really affect my interest that much. But obviously I would have interest in Higgins if he is playing this week. I think he's still questionable. All right. The latest I'm seeing is Jeremy Fowler says T. Higgins improved every day in practice, and there's optimism he can play Saturday versus the Broncos, barring new development per sources. Okay. So we think T. Higgins probably playing. Yeah, I think he's probably going to be a fairly strong play, 28% ownership at 6,900. And that's another way you could play it. Like, I still think Burrow, I think is going to be a big part of my lineups. I'll probably have some that are, without Jamar Chase and include T. Higgins and Gesicki or Yoshi or I don't know, some other combo. So I love Jamar Chase, but I think T. Higgins a strong option in his own right. I think you can play them both. We've seen that combo win just the very straightforward double stack with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins with Joe Burrow. I think that is a reasonable way to approach the slate also. And then beyond them, we have Yoshi getting 9.5% ownership at 3,800. I'm assuming no other Cincinnati receiver is really getting any kind of ownership, and I don't really think they should. Yeah. So over the past 4 games, 33 targets for T. Higgins on 85.4% route participation, 16 targets for Yoshi. So 4 targets, that's not bad for a wide receiver 3 on the Bengals. 4 targets per game for Yoshi on 68.3% route participation. You probably should play some Yoshi if you're 150 maxing. Yeah, everything is good. I like the Bengals. I'm going to be playing their stacks quite a bit. All right, excuse me. I've got a frog in my throat. I think that's it though. So we've only done Rams and Bengals so far. Moving on down, Courtland Sutton, 6,300, 31% ownership. Pretty clear top dog for the Broncos. He hasn't been really good in the past couple weeks. You look at his volume, 33 targets over the past 4 games, so still more than 8 targets per game, but just 76.4% route participation. Slightly worse than it was, I think, in earlier weeks for Courtland Sutton. Yeah, just 5 targets last week after, still 9, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. So really just this one outlier game last week where we only saw 5 targets. Route participation pretty consistently 70 to 80%. He's a strong option. Also, this is one where the matchup, I think, we think of it as being a great matchup. Not recently. It's been the second worst matchup, schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, second worst against the Bengals in recent weeks. So I don't know. I think Sutton is a fine play. I think he'll be part of a lot of those game stacks for me. Probably just like right with the field on Sutton. And then I think I'm going to go to my notes for the other Denver receivers. Because I think we have several that are like in play, but also not like nobody really standing apart. So Sutton obviously stands out above the field with the Denver receivers, but I also think Marvin Mims is in play. Devon Vele is in play. Troy Franklin is sort of in play. My favorite would be Marvin Mims. So we've got outside of Courtland Sutton on the Broncos, Marvin Mims in the past 4 games has 16 targets on 33.5% route participation. I also like if you look at the weekly route share report for the Broncos, Mims has increased to 44% in week 13, dropped down to 27%, but then back up to 46% in week 16. Some positive indicators there for Mims. They've talked about wanting to get him more involved, and so it's good to see that they have actually done it in recent weeks to some extent. Here's the target share report. Again, not like amazing, but 9.5%, 11%, 12%, 10%, like pretty decent, like relative to the other Broncos receivers, pretty strong target share for Marvin Mims. And they've been giving him carries. He has, over the past 4 games, he has 5 carries. So they're kind of manufacturing ways to get him involved. We also saw what do you have, like an 80-yard touchdown? I don't remember the exact number, but really long touchdown. Like he has that in his wheelhouse. Got that speed to make a big splash play. So at 3,900, not getting a ton of ownership. Mims coming in at 15% ownership. I like that. I think he's a pretty strong play at 3,900. I'm interested in Marvin Mims. Let's go back to looking at the so this is the route share report, just showing week by week how the routes progress. Devon Vele was looking really good for a little bit. It's come down a little bit in recent weeks from upper 60s to mid 50s, low 50s, back to still, I guess, low 50s, sub 50% last week. Has not really taking advantage of the opportunities he was given. Kind of a bummer to see him drop off. I still think he's a fine play. I think he's going to get, probably still, I assume he'll still be around 50% route participation. Could score a touchdown, just 5% ownership at 4,100. I think he's like fine. I think I'll be with the field, hopefully, on Devon Vele. Troy Franklin, kind of hoping for that rookie bump. He's 3,400, so a little bit cheaper than the other two, getting 8.5% ownership. Again, like the route participation, this is target share. The route participation for Troy Franklin, sort of all over the place. 40 to 50, just 36% last week. The target share was up to 14% in week 13, 12% in week 15, down to 7.5% week 16. It's gross. It's gross looking at these Broncos receivers. Looks like we can maybe ignore like Lil Jordan Humphrey. Hasn't really shown any kind of spikes. So I think if I'm ranking them, Courtland Sutton is the obvious number one. I think Mims would be my number two for the Broncos, just because kind of seems like he's trending in the right direction, and they're giving him some carries, and they've talked about wanting to get him manufacture him some touches. So I think he's my second favorite Broncos receiver. Then it would probably be Troy Franklin. Just hope for more of a rookie bump here, and then Devon Vele. But I don't know. It's kind of gross. I'll probably be mixing and matching, but I guess I'm right with the field. Like the field also likes Mims the best. So I'm not really saying anything groundbreaking here. I think the field kind of has it right with the Broncos receivers. Lad McConkey coming in at 26% ownership. He's up at 6,600, so he is fairly expensive. Let's look at the recent weeks. Actually, let's look at the game log for Lad McConkey. Six targets last week, 7 targets the week prior to that. Man, we were so excited. In week 13, he got those 12 targets. Was looking like he was going to take off. And he's kind of regressed a little bit back to where he's been like all year, 6 or 7 targets per game. The matchup for Lad, and again, not the best matchup for Denver receivers against Cincinnati. Better matchup for, I believe, where is he? Where are the Chargers? Oh, not really that great. So also third worst matchup against New England. So not a great matchup for Lad. He's priced up a bit. I want to be enthusiastic about it because he's only getting 26% ownership, but the price is up. Not a great matchup. I think the field has it about right at 26% on Lad. Quentin Johnston. Actually, let's look at the wide receiver coverage matchup shells real quickly. See who theoretically should do well for the Broncos here. Yeah, kind of everybody fairly neutral. Slight positive for Troy Franklin. Let's see if I include all positions. Slight positive for Marvin Mims, I guess. Nothing standing out there, though. Bengals. Trenton Irwin, man, this is the highest coverage grade I've ever seen for Trenton Irwin. Positive for Jamar Chase. Positive for T. Higgins. Nothing really standing out there. Great coverage grade for Kamani Vidal. Lad McConkey, it is a positive coverage matchup for Lad McConkey. I thought of this because I had read somewhere that Quentin Johnston, this is not going to be a great spot for Quentin Johnston. Looks like a bad coverage grade matchup for Quentin Johnston. We expecting any kind of, we are expecting T. Higgins to be shadowed by Pat Surtain. So there's a negative to T. Higgins. I mean, if that happens, then wheels up for Jamar Chase. Quentin Johnston also, this is what I read. He was going to be shadowed by Christian Gonzalez. So tough matchup for Quentin Johnston. Maybe that means more targets to Lad McConkey. Looks like a positive matchup from this standpoint for Lad McConkey. I don't know. I think 26% honestly just looks about right for Lad McConkey. Quentin Johnson getting 16%. I mean, when you factor in all that stuff, I wanted to love Quentin Johnson, and I think finding a lot of reasons not to love Quentin Johnson. So I think 16%, like he still has the ability to just break one. 16% probably fine, but I don't love it as much as I initially did. Josh Palmer, 8.5% ownership at 4,400. I still think it's a reasonable play. Any other receivers we need to think about on the Chargers? I don't really think so. Oops. No other receivers on a 3-gamer that we need to think about on the Chargers. But yeah, Lad McConkey looks pretty good. Quentin Johnson, not the best matchup, still playable. Josh Palmer, playable at low price tag, low ownership. I think I'll probably be above weight to 8.5% Josh Palmer. However, I am a Josh Palmer slappy. I just always see him getting those pass interference calls, and I think this game is going to catch one of those in the end zone instead of being pass interfered with in the end zone. So I'll be going back there to Josh Palmer. All right. I'm going to check in on chat before I continue. Yeah, Steven was noting Higgins will see Surtain. That is what we are expecting. That's good to know. Love to hear that I'm making you some money. I mean, you're making you some money, but glad I am doing my part. All right. How did he handle the hill? I don't know what was that about. I don't know what that question was. Please clarify if you still want to know. All right. Would you roll the dice on Dobbins over Chuba in full PPR? No. Chuba looks like a great play this week against Tampa. So no, I would not roll Dobbins over Chuba. And it's not what I talk about on shows, but I've been playing season long for decades at this point. Used to be very, very serious about it until I discovered DFS. So less so now, but I still pretty serious about it. Yeah, Denver has a lot to play for. Who Hames loves Mims. Yeah. So same page. The field's getting there though too, to some extent. What's up, Blake? All right. Cody asks, how do you feel about playing the 4 main Bengals, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Brown? No issue with playing all 4 of them. I think that is like I mentioned earlier, like overstacking is going to be a big part of what I do on this slate. And I think the Bengals look as good as anybody. If you can find reasonable players that you like to fit around them, absolutely you can play them all together, I think. Do you think Higgins will be limited bump up to Gesicki if that happens? Yeah, I think Gesicki, we'll talk about tight ends, but I think Gesicki looks pretty good, runs a lot from the slot. Nice matchup for slot receivers. He is essentially a slot receiver. Okay. Moving on, let's continue talking about wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Cardinals, the top receiver here. He's getting 27% ownership. He's down to 5,200. I mean, the price feels right for Marvin Harrison Jr. I've been doing it over and over, and it has not been really working out. But let's take a look at the Cardinals over the past 5 weeks. 39 targets, just under 8 targets per game for Marvin Harrison in recent weeks. 86.4% route participation. As far as the coverage matchup goes, let's take a look. Slight negative matchup in terms of the coverage grade for Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Looks like it's a very, very neutral matchup for receivers against the Rams. Worse for slot receivers, better for right wide receivers. All right, let's take a look. Is he the right wide receiver? He's the left wide receiver. Michael Wilson, the right wide receiver. Okay, so Michael Wilson is kind of a good matchup from if you Looking at the schedule, adjusted fantasy points allowed just over the past 5 weeks. So it's a small sample size, but sort of worth noting. Very neutral matchup for left wide receivers, bad matchup for slot receivers in recent weeks. Michael Wilson. Okay. So Michael Wilson stands out from that standpoint. Very neutral in terms of the coverage grade matchup. What's the ownership there? So I think Marvin Harrison at 27% ownership, just given the volume that he's getting, 8 targets per game, I think he's a strong play at 5,200. I think I'll be overweight to 27%. Yeah, I think that's just too low of ownership given his volume and the price tag. Michael Wilson, I'm starting to believe $4,200 Michael Wilson at 11%. They sometimes an end zone target. He certainly has the big splash play potential. The role for Michael Wilson, 20 targets over the past 5 games, so just 4 targets per game, but 80.8% route participation seems to be playing the right role for the matchup. I think it looks like a pretty good bet. I think somebody that I will be overweight to 11% there on Michael Wilson. Seems like not quite a great matchup for Greg Dortch, but he's only getting 2% ownership. At that level, like, do I need to think about 9 targets over the past 5 games? Only 29% route participation. I think that, I guess 2% seems fine. So really, we're just playing Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson. Oops, hang on. Sorry. Yeah, nobody else really getting much run of the receivers. But I think both Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson look like pretty strong plays to me, plays that I plan to be overweight to the field to. I mentioned earlier, like, maybe once we start talking about the receivers, I'll change my mind on quarterbacks. And this does make me a little bit more interested in Kyler also. The fact that his receivers are going a bit under-owned. So maybe I will. Maybe I'll move him up my rankings slightly. I still think it's probably Burrow and Nick's 1 and 2, but maybe Kyler number 3. All right. Then we have the Patriots, and I think the Patriots are the only wide receivers that we have not talked about yet, and they are kind of messy. So we have Kayshon Boutte getting 19% ownership, Pop Douglas getting 11% ownership, Kendrick Bourne getting 5% ownership, Javon Baker getting 1% ownership. Okay. Let's take a look over the past 5 weeks. I think the Patriots are actually sort of interesting. Like there are several pretty good value options on the Patriots. So over the past 4 games, 22 targets for Kayshon Boutte on 85.6% route participation. So just over 5.5 targets per game over that span. Pretty strong role from that perspective. Pop Douglas, 18 targets on 63.4% route participation. Seems okay. Kendrick Bourne, 13 targets on 56.2% route participation. Now I'm going to look quickly at the game log, see if any of this has changed. Actually, let's just take a look at the route share report. Route share report for the Patriots. Yeah, so Boutte looks like the best to me. Like, he's running the most routes, getting targeted the most. Pop Douglas still pretty consistently like 50s to 70% route participation, like good, not great. Okay, Kendrick Bourne, I think he got hurt. Did he get hurt week 15? That would make sense because he was 67% down to 36%, back up to 67%. I think he looks okay. Javon Baker, not much there. So to me, it would be Boutte, Douglas, Bourne are all playable. Boutte looks like the best option of the group. Boutte getting, again, 19% ownership. I think that's warranted. I think that's a good enough role that I will be probably over the field there. Pop Douglas, just 11% ownership. I mean, that looks good also to me. But Kendrick Bourne, just 5% ownership. I don't really understand the Kendrick Bourne role because he had this random week 10 where he was, as I recall, active and they just didn't play him. I think that's what this game is. And then he came back and had a big game in week 11. I don't know, but he only ran 42% of the routes. But as I recall, he had a big game the week after he didn't play. So I don't know what happened there. But he's pretty intriguing for a 3-game slate at minimal ownership. I do think Kendrick Bourne is worth being above 5% on, just like getting to 10%. I think he's a pretty solid bet there. All right. I think that's all of the. Oh, and as far as the matchup goes, let's see. Patriots receivers. Yeah, it's a slightly above average matchup for receivers against the Chargers. I didn't look at this either. Slightly above average for Pop Douglas in terms of the coverage grade. Not great for Kayshon Boutte in terms of the coverage grade. Looks like the Chargers play a lot of zone defense. Apparently, Kayshon Boutte not as great against zone defense. Kendrick Bourne again, like slightly below average matchup, but not as bad as Boutte. I don't think this is enough for me to change how much I want to play them. Maybe it should, because this is a lot of zone defense, like not much man coverage. I think my rankings stay the same, where it would be Kayshon Boutte, my favorite, Pop Douglas, maybe number 2 at low ownership, and Kendrick Bourne, just I think being above weight to 5% makes sense there. All right. Let's move on to tight ends. I'll check in on chat. Move my sidebar down. All right. Oh, that's what the Hill comment was. Yeah, that's right. I did not see the Hill video. Good question there. All right. Oh, that's fun. Got a best ball live. Trey McBride 2 touchdowns to make everyone. I mean, I'll be crying if he scores 2 touchdowns this week. Actually, I have him on one of my 2 best ball teams in the finals. Alan says he heard 2 starting Cardinals offensive linemen are out. That's good note. Did I cover Darius Davis? I don't think I'm playing any Darius Davis. Just not playing enough. Is Jonah Williams out? Can somebody look that up? I don't know. Oh, he's on IR. Okay, yeah. So that's not great. It's not ideal. Cardinals losing offensive linemen. All right. Moving on to tight ends. Speaking of Trey McBride, he is the best projected tight end on the slate by a country mile, by 5.5 fantasy points. He is getting 33.5% projected ownership. The matchup, let's see. Pretty negative, but like this is a pretty small numbers here. So pretty neutral matchup for Trey McBride, even though it doesn't rank well. The role is really good, obviously, for Trey McBride. Again, going back to looking at the past 5 weeks, he has 50 targets, 10 targets per game for a tight end. That's really strong usage, 90.6% route participation. He projects the best. He looks great. If you can play Trey McBride, you should probably play some Trey McBride. He stands out above the rest pretty clearly. And the ownership is honestly not too high, like 33.5%. Trey McBride looks pretty good at 6,200. I think I'll be with the field there probably. Not much else to say about McBride. I think the ownership is warranted. He's getting all the targets. It's a fine matchup, though not a great one. I don't know that I'll go to any like Elijah Higgins or anything. 6 targets over the past 5 weeks. Yeah, probably not for me. Hunter Henry, the number 2 tight end on the slate, projected for 28% ownership at 4,200. Also, pretty strong role for Hunter Henry. Again, if we go back to look at all Patriots, including Hunter Henry, he has the most targets over the past 4 games, 27 targets, just under 7 targets per game, 69.3% route participation. He looks good. Hunter Henry, second best projection on the slate, getting 28% ownership. I don't know. I think I'm probably with the field there. Let's look at the matchup. Second worst matchup for tight ends against the Chargers. I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm doing with Hunter Henry yet. Will Dissly. Okay, so Will Dissly is back. I did not realize that Will Dissly is expected to return for this game. What did I write about this? I think I was working under the assumption that it was Stone Smart, but let me double check myself. Okay, he was limited in practice at the time I wrote this and was questionable to play. Excuse me. Sounds like Will Dissly maybe is back. Limited participant, that's 2 days ago. Deemed questionable. All right, so is it just we don't know? Okay. If Will Dissly plays, I'm not finding anything that is decisive on whether Will Dissly plays or not. We will know prior to lock. We'll get inactives 90 minutes. It's the first game of the slate, so we'll know before the slate starts whether Dissly is active. If he's active, I think Will Dissly is a pretty strong play. Projects the third best of the tight ends on the slate. He's 3,700. The matchup is really strong for tight ends against the Patriots. Third best matchup for tight ends over the past 5 weeks in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. So I think if Dissly's in, I'm probably going to play a good amount of Dissly. If Dissly is out, then I would like Stone Smart quite a bit. Stone Smart is 3,400. I don't think that this ownership, we can really read much into it because the ownership will go up if Dissly is out. Hayden Hurst is back. I guess let's take a look at the, he was back for the most recent game and he didn't really do much. I know because I played him in DFS. All right, so in week 16, ran 5 routes, 1 target for Hayden Hurst. It was still Stone Smart leading the way. 68% route participation, saw 3 targets. Tucker Fisk ran 11%, saw 1 target. Yeah, I don't think Hayden Hurst is still their number 1 tight end at this point. Like he's been back a couple times and just has not taken back the top tight end role. Like you see, Hayden Hurst started the year, the first 4 games, really strong role, and then each week he came back. It's been pretty limited, the route participation. So I don't really think we have to play Hayden Hurst. I think it will be Dissly if he's active. I think is the preferred tight end. If Dissly is out, it would be Stone Smart. If you want to play, like throw in the like large field stuff, if you want to throw in some shots on Stone Smart, even with Dissly active, I think that would be fine. But I think it would probably be Dissly is the number 1 if he's active. Yeah, I think Dissly, if he is active, is a really strong play. If Dissly is inactive, I think Stone Smart will be a pretty strong play also. Gesicki, I mean, we talked about already. He's getting 16% ownership. Looking at his role in recent weeks, so over the past 4 games, 14 targets for Gesicki on 42.7% route participation. Let's see, how's it moved? Just 36% last week. Interesting. Drew Sample was at 47% last week. It's also a nice matchup for So Gesicki plays mostly from the slot. And it's a great matchup for slot receivers against Denver, as you can see here. So I think it is like it's a strong matchup for Disley. A little bit concerned about the route participation last week. I don't know what happened there. Does anybody else know what happened? Why was Gesicki down to 30? I guess it's not that much of an outlier. It's at 37% in week 14, 47%. So let's look at the raw numbers on Gesicki. Has he been targeted when he's out there? Two targets last week, 4 targets, 3 targets, 5, 2. Honestly, nothing that inspiring for Gesicki. Like more of a dart throw. The matchup is nice. 16% ownership. Honestly, I wanted to really like that number, but since he's not really seen a ton of volume, I think he's a fine play. He'll be in some of my stacks, but hard to really prioritize Gesicki when he's just not being running routes or being targeted that much. I actually think Drew Sample looks like a sort of fine play at 5% ownership at 2,500. We can look at Sample's game log here. I mean, 1, 2, 2, 2 targets. The route participation not bad for Sample. Nice matchup. I think he's fine, but really just a dart throw. Austin Hooper getting 10% ownership. Yeah, 60% route participation last week. I missed that. 60% route participation, 57% the last 2 weeks. 8 total targets the past 2 weeks. That seems pretty reasonable. That seems like a strong play. As I recall, not a great matchup for tight ends. No, I'm wrong. Wait. Where are the Patriots? Looks like a fairly middling matchup for tight ends. Oh no, I'm sorted differently than I thought I was. That's the issue. Okay. It is a bad matchup for tight ends against the Chargers. But 8 targets on like 60% route participation over the past 2 weeks for Austin Hooper. I think that, makes him a fairly reasonable play. Tyler Higbee returned last week. Didn't really have a huge role in his return. Actually, let's bring up all the Rams. So in Tyler Higbee's first game back, he ran 4 routes. He saw 2 targets. Hunter Long ran 1 route, didn't see a target. Colby Parkinson ran 15 routes. No, sorry, that's week 15. Davis Allen ran 1 route. Colby Parkinson ran 7 routes, saw 0 targets. I suspect that Tyler Higbee is still the preferred tight end there, so maybe they ease him back in a little bit more than the 21% route participation. It's a tough situation to read. I guess maybe I'll look at the coach speak for the tight ends. But it's a slightly below average, essentially neutral matchup against Arizona. Okay, Hudson is out. That's why Sample will play a lot. That makes sense. Steven says Disley is old and tired. They figured out that Smart is pretty good. That might be true. He's looked pretty good. Yeah, let me look. All right, let's see. Holy shit, just got a big super chat. So I'm gonna derail for 1 second to take a look at this super chat because love to see that. Barry says, tied for first in the main for 90K just a few days ago after catching your late night breakdown of the Christmas slate. Just want to thank you for your commitment, no matter what time it is, and never letting anything get in your way. Let's run it back. Love to see that. Really appreciate it, Barry. That is a huge super chat. So very much appreciate you and love to hear that you won 90,000. That's a big pull on Christmas Day. So congrats to Barry. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Love to see it. Yeah. Some shout outs for Barry here. All All right. Sorry, I had to read that because that's some exciting stuff. But let me remember what I was saying. Oh, so Higbee I think is probably going to be the number one tight end there, but it's kind of a mess there for the Rams. Lucas Kroll. I was pretty excited about Lucas Kroll on the last Showdown slate that they were in. It appeared that he was kind of moving in to be the number one tight end there. And I never mind. I guess it is continuing to progress kind of that way. Was up to 43% route participation in that game. Didn't feel that way while watching the game. It seemed like Troutman and Adkins were still pretty involved, but the role continues to grow for Lucas Kroll, at least in terms of route participation. His name is really fun to say, so he's that going for him. Let's see, 3 targets in the most recent game, 3-2-3 the past 3 games for Lucas Kroll. The matchup for tight ends is the best possible matchup for Lucas Kroll. Okay, all right, I missed that. Great matchup for Lucas Kroll. The role is expanding. He would be my pick if you're playing one tight end from Denver. Hope that the route participation continues to go up. Maybe the routes go, or sorry, the targets go with him. Only 5% owned. I think that's a pretty good bet. I think I will be above weight to 5% Lucas Kroll. Maybe I'll double the field there. That looks really good. Oh yeah, let's see. Drew Sample. Yeah, I think that's it for tight ends. I don't think I had any other notes on tight ends. So let's move on. Let's take a look at kickers and defenses. I guess we can just take a look at the ownership. Honestly, I haven't done any real deep digging into kickers and defenses because I just spread out my ownership. I set a cap and let it roll. 24% ownership going to the Chargers. I don't know. I don't think I have any. I guess I can take a look at interception leaders. Which teams are turning it over the most? Anybody have any great takes on defenses? I usually don't even bother that much. That's more for a showdown for me. Because on main slates, I mostly just let it roll. Let the opto give me what it's going to give me, unless I feel strongly about some situation, and I don't really on this slate. All right, let's see. Looks like we don't have any of the top quarterbacks who throw interceptions on this slate. Bo Nix has thrown 11, so I guess you can make a case for the Bengals defense. Drake Maye has thrown 10. Kyler Murray has thrown 9. Matthew Stafford's thrown 8. Joe Burrow has thrown 8. Nobody really standing out from a interceptions thrown standpoint. As far as taking sacks goes, Justin Herbert has taken 40 sacks. That's tied for 5th. So Joe Burrow has taken 37, tied for 9th. And in this one, it's like, yeah, nobody standing out really defensively. I think it's just, I'll be spreading it out. I'll say this on a 3-game slate. I'm willing to play defense against my quarterback. Probably don't want to on a 3-game slate. Like I'm less inclined to allow for 5 players against my defense. Probably limit it to like 3. I'll love to see it. Mike says, I just tossed this show on at a bar in Philly. Wish I could share a pick here, but much love to the Flannel God. Send me the pick. Love to see it. That's great, Mike. My former producer of my high stakes podcast back when I was at Stochastic. Huham says that he loves the Broncos defense. Yeah, they've been bad recently, but maybe they get back to their old good ways. Big Gritter asks, is Greg still using Stochastic tools? I would assume so. He still works there. Rams is a good call, says Huhames. Yeah, I guess Arizona missing a couple offensive linemen That's notable. All right. Do I play around with lineups now? Do you want to look at Showdown real quick? You can hear my voice is like you get out of practice, like the voice when you just don't do a show by yourself for a couple days, it goes away pretty quickly. What tools do I use? I use all sorts of tools. I benefit from working several places. This tool is RotoGrinders Lineup HQ. This is the optimizer that I use for Showdown slates. I like to use Lineup HQ for Showdown. Pretty straightforward. On main slates, I actually use the solver with ETR's projections as my starting place. Steven says use water instead of room. The problem is I'm down on water. So yeah. Every other tool that we've looked at tonight has been Fantasy Points. I look at the Fantasy Points data suite, the matchup data. All of this is from Fantasy Points. I use some 4for4 tools. I use all sorts of different tools. So I can't really, I don't work for one company right now, so I'm not like tied to just one. I just kind of, I use Kevin Ross weather. I use all sorts of different tools here. All right. Let me play around with making a lineup real quick on the main slate. Then I'll take a brief look at the Showdown slates. So again, if I'm making a single entry, I'm starting with Burrow and Jamar Chase. Going from there. Kind of wanted to throw Marvin Mims in here for the bring back. This will probably be a double stacked lineup, but I'm gonna wait and decide what I do there. Kind of like the call out of the Rams. They're kind of expensive, but let's try it. Could go McBride here. Now, one way to pay up other places would be, I mean, Lucas Krull was pretty intriguing to me. So let's continue the game stack here. Now, I was asked about, could you play Chase Brown and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow? I don't know if this is going to work out pricing wise, but let's see if it works. All right, so now 5,100 left. Now, if I play another cheap flex option, well, let's see. At running back, James Conner, J.K. Dobbins. I might be able to afford James Conner if I play second tight end. Let's see. Yeah, not enough to play Stone Smart here, looks like. Colby Parkinson fits. Drew Sample fits. Maybe I want to do something. Maybe instead of going to James Conner, I tried J.K. Dobbins or Rhamondre Stevenson. Let's try Rhamondre Stevenson. Gives me 4,500. Josh Palmer's right there. Pop Douglas right there. That's kind of interesting. Maybe I try that and I'll move him back to here. So that's kind of interesting, playing Burrow with Brown, Chase, Higgins, bringbacks of Krull and Marvin Mims, Rhamondre Stevenson and Pop Douglas. You got the Rams. I am willing to play my defense against offensive players, but this would work better if none of the Arizona players are doing anything, don't have him in here. So it's kind of an interesting lineup. Ways to, you got to get a little bit weird if you're going to play the Burrow stacks, looks like. All right. I'll go just a little bit longer. Let's take a look at Showdown. Tell me about it. I played a ton of McBride on that slate. That was disappointing, man. Against the Panthers, I was like, Kyler said he's going to find the end zone soon. They're playing against the Panthers. Obviously, he's going to throw it to him. He did actually get pass interfered with. I predicted it, that he was going to pass interfered with in the end zone. It did happen. I predicted it jokingly. Like, I was like, he's going to score a touchdown unless they hold him down in the end zone. And then he got pass interfered with in the end zone. So that was annoying. All right, let's take a brief look at the Showdown slates. So, NFL. Sorry, let's start here. Chargers-Pats. Is this not loading? Refresh this. The Showdown slates are not loading right now. In lineup HQ. Is anything loading? All right, I don't know what's going on here. Am I doing something wrong? What am I missing here? Oh. The projections are not in there right now. All right, let me see if I can. It looks like they're maybe doing some midnight maintenance at Roto-Grinders. They were not anticipating a midnight stream. So we might not be able to look at ownership projections for the Showdown slates, unfortunately, right now. But let's just take a look at. It's all right. I'm wearing down anyway. We'll play around with lineups just a little bit. All right. So let's take a look at Lad McConkey, most expensive. Stevenson, 8,600. Dobbins, 8,400. So they did price Dobbins up a little bit. Palmer, 68. Unfortunately, none of the Patriots receivers are super cheap. Pop at 6,600. Butte at 6,400. Vidal, 4,200. Patriots defense, 4,000. Stone Smart, 3,400. I mean, he'll look great if Disley is out. Questionable. Disley, questionable. He has a chance to play. Yeah, we won't know until tomorrow morning, looks like. I think one of them is going to look good, Stone Smart or Will Disley. All right. Where was Bourne? Kendrick Bourne, he's only 3,000. I'm going to like Kendrick Bourne, I think, quite a bit. Probably not going to get crazy high ownership. I think I'll start with Bourne and Smart in my flex. Then I can pay up for Lad McConkey in my captain spot. Throw Justin Herbert in there. Rhamondre Stevenson. J.K. Dobbins, leave 700 on the table. Looks like a reasonable play. Could pivot up from Stone Smart to Will Disley if Disley plays. Still leaving 500 on the table. I think that works. Something like that. It's hard to do this analysis without having ownership numbers. Like that obviously plays a big role in who I want to play. I suspect Kendrick Bourne is going to be low owned, but honestly don't really know that for sure. Yeah. All right. Do I want to enter it? I guess I might as well. All right, second showdown. Let's see. So this one's actually featured. We get 100,000 to first. We got Chase and Burrow again. All right, so I want to love Jaleel McLaughlin. He's only 5,800. I'll try it. Marvin Mims only 4,800. Looks pretty good. I also think this is a good one to potentially play a defense. Bengals defense against the rookie. So we got him against two Denver players now. Ooh, Krull is in this game. Krull's kind of fun. Well, now if I play Krull, then I kind of have to go Bo Nix at captain. If I have 3 Denver receivers, I guess that includes McLaughlin, who's not really. Yeah, I'm leaving too much salary in this lineup. This doesn't make that much sense. So might want to change some things here. Throw Jamar Chase in there. Now, who should I upgrade to Burrow? I guess I could upgrade Mims to Burrow. But now I just have Bo Nix single stacked. So maybe rather than playing Bo Nix there, I should play. Could I afford Jamar Chase? Yeah, that still works. Leaves 1,300 on the table. Jamar Chase in the captain spot with Joe Burrow. Jaleel McLaughlin, Bengals defense. Bo Nix with Lucas Krull. That works, I think. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? We're getting close to the end here because we don't have ownership numbers to look at. All right. Where is Gibson? Antonio Gibson, and in terms of price. Yeah, let's see. Got the right slate here. I think it was like 4,600. Not a bad price on Gibson. I mean, I can look. Let me look at other places. Let me look at another source that I have access to, so I can get an idea. And I'll just look at. I'm going to look briefly at what they have for the first game. In terms of, they don't have ownership projections either. Nobody has their ownership projections out. Interesting. Okay. So I'm running out of resources here for late night streaming. Ownership numbers. All right, I found some ownership numbers. So for the first game, I have some ownership numbers here. And it looks like as far as contrarian options go, Josh Palmer sub 20%, Pop Douglas sub right around 20%. Kendrick Bourne actually is coming in sub 15%, so he's going to look like a strong option to me. Kamani Vidal sub 10%. I think is going to be a pretty good bet on the showdown slate, just because he could have a bigger role than we're expecting. I think Stone Smart, Will Dissly, we're not going to really know what to do there, what the ownership's going to look like until we have those numbers. But at least good to confirm that I suspect Kamani Vidal is somebody I'll be overweight on. Kendrick Bourne, I know, is somebody I'll be overweight on at 3,000 sub 15% ownership on the showdown slate. I think all those like Patriots receivers, Pop Douglas looks pretty good. Butte, not much higher in terms of ownership. Rhamondre Stevenson actually not getting much ownership looks pretty intriguing to me. Josh Palmer sub 20%, kind of interesting. So we do have some good plays to play from that game. Let me see. Does this site have? Yeah, I don't have any ownership numbers anywhere for anything outside of that first game. So I'll make one more lineup for the last game. I'll play around with lineups a little bit. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I'd like to. What else can we do here? I don't know. Julian McLaughlin pivot to estimates in that range. Javonte you could get to. So this one you're saving. Javonte would leave just 100 on the table. So you're kind of getting away from just pivoting from Javonte to Jaleel. I suspect you're going to avoid some dupes there. I'm going to go back to the final game, final showdown game. Cardinals-Rams, 200,000 to first. Fun. Again, do not have access to any ownership numbers right now. Demarcus Robinson, 4,800, I suspect will be low owned. Like Tutu is playable, but I suspect he'll get more ownership than Demarcus Robinson, in part because of the price tag. Michael Wilson probably won't get much ownership at 6,200. So I think he'll be a pretty good showdown play. So I'll start there. Michael Wilson, Demarcus Robinson. Rams defense, we talked about that being a pretty strong play. Now we've got a ton of salary left over. Maybe just Puka Nacua, captain, solves that issue. The running backs look good here, but you can only play one of them. Let's see. Kyron and get up to Marv if I go down from one of these. If I move down from... No, then I have all Rams. I don't think I want to do that. I mean, it could be Parkinson might be a strong play here. Here, this leaves 700 on the table with Harrison and Wilson, Puka, Kyron, Higbee, Rams. Seems okay. Seems like a fine lineup. Will project well enough. Probably kind of unique. Like, I suspect Higbee, Wilson, both fairly low owned. Yeah, this probably works. All right. Pat's coach keeps threatening to bench Stevenson. That is a good note. And somebody brought that up earlier, like any concern about Stevenson potentially being benched. It doesn't really scare me off of Stevenson because he's not getting that much ownership, but that is a good reason to think about playing Antonio Gibson also at relatively low ownership and a low price tag. Like, he's sort of interesting if you think he could, like, if Stevenson fumbles in the first half and he would take over, like, that's an intriguing angle to think about playing some Antonio Gibson. Probably more so for showdown, but he's like borderline playable on the main slate also, since he's getting like 8 carries per game and a target. Like, yeah, I think that's a little bit of added bonus to any potential Antonio Gibson you get to, but still not like a priority for me. More of a like showdown dart throw kind of play. I think that's an interesting angle. All right, I'm gonna get going because my voice is gone. I need to refill my water. Maybe do a little. I'll probably do a little bit more work tonight. Still have to do my cash game article. Steven says the coach never said that. I've heard rumblings. Maybe it's not that the coach says it. Maybe it's just that they keep removing him from games for brief periods of time. I don't know. I've heard that several other places. I have not verified whether there is much real threat to Rhamondre Stevenson being out. So I guess I won't weigh in here because I honestly don't know how much truth there is to it. But that is something that I keep hearing people say. So I don't know. Seems like there might be something there. But I'm going to get going. Thank you all for hanging out with me all night tonight. Super chats, very much appreciate. $100 super chat is that's really appreciated. Appreciate all the super chats. Got another one earlier in the day also. Another $10 super chat. Appreciate both of you very, very much. And of course, those of you who did not send super chats, screw you. I hate you. No, appreciate you guys also for showing some love, for hanging out with me while I break down this slate. If you would like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, all of that. Very helpful. As you know, if you want to get notifications when I go live, hit that notification bell to get that notification. I will be back on this channel on Sunday night for the Sunday night football slate. Of course, I'll be on Fantasy Points tomorrow, breaking down outside the box, the main slate with Scott Barrett. Check that out as well. Thank you all very much. Oh, and join the Discord. Yeah, in the description of this video, if you want to join Discord, the Flaniverse Discord, the link is in the description of this YouTube video. Check that out if you're interested. Thank you all very much, and I will catch you tomorrow.